Hi, everyone. I hope you are all doing really well today. Happy Sunday. As always, it is a gray and rainy day today. I think it's kind of funny that every time I do a live stream on Sundays, it's a quarter of the time it's sunny, and that's it. I don't live in an area that's like all the time raining or anything, and yet here we go, another rainy Sunday. Today, I wanted to answer a question that Amber Sage asked. So thank you for the question, Amber. And that is, why are sometimes books called different things in the UK and the US? And also along those lines, I found that sometimes the cover is different, actually a lot of times. So let's get into it. I tried doing some research on this because it's something that I didn't really know anything about, and I did not find a definitive answer. Actually, I found different answers from different people. These are all articles, from decent places. And I don't know why there's no definitive answer. But anyway, let's start with a big name. Let's start with J.K. Rowling. And her first book in the Harry Potter series is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. For those of us in the US, it's not called that in the UK. It's called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And so my first move was to say, why are they different? And also the cover was different. Also, this is actually the original cover. Excuse me. This is the original cover. I know there are new renditions now, but the UK one was done differently. Actually, it showed a train with Harry Potter, which represents something in the book. And so there was this one article I found that said specifically about the cover and then about the title, the British cover depicts a major event in the book, while the American covers depict a series of objects and a person from the book against a common backdrop. It's kind of interesting because I've noticed that with a lot of mystery books and things similar, where you have either a backdrop of a country that it occurs in or multiple things that happen. And I am one of those people, actually. Anatomy of a Darkened Heart and Lock and Key and all of my future books also have a backdrop that has something to do with the book. I don't know that I'd call it a common backdrop, and I'm not exactly sure what they mean by this because it's clearly, I guess, because it's a night sky. But anyway, for me, I also put in things that have to do, like things that have to do with the story, things that are significant in the story. And so for the British cover, they're saying it was a major event versus a lot of different things. So the title change between the UK and the US editions of Harry Potter was made because the word philosopher denotes different things in the US and the UK. And the publisher felt that American audiences wouldn't be able to derive the magical meaning of the word, which I find strange. At first, I was really trying to logic it out, and I was saying, okay, well, maybe I can understand this. And I went to Oxford, and I looked up philosopher because they're specifically talking about the word philosopher, that one, not philosopher's stone. So I went to Oxford, and I looked up in the UK, what does philosopher mean? In the US, what does philosopher mean? It was the exact same definition. So I'm really not sure if that's some kind of cultural thing or what the deal is. Hi, Joe. I'm wearing a Go Indie Now shirt. This is one of my favorites, so I'm like wearing it all the time. Anyway, so I think that's a little bit different. And so I tried to dig deeper into that because it didn't make any sense to me. And I found 3 different explanations as to why it was called Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone here in the US and Philosopher's Stone in the UK. And I found in a different place, this person is saying, or this article rather, by The Guardian is saying, the last one I got, by the way, was Publishing Crawl. This one is from The Guardian. And it says, Publisher's Stone was considered a little arcane in America. So no one quite knowing what a phenomenon lived within its covers. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was published a year after UK readers met the boy wizard. That's just saying that, the one, it was published in the UK first and America a year later. But again, like here is saying that Philosopher's Stone sounded too arcane. Totally different explanation than philosopher, the word philosopher, having 2 different meanings. Okay, now let's go over to Wikipedia, which we all know we don't really trust, but it's a good place to start sometimes when you're looking for information. That's how I use it. If I'm just having a hard time researching something, sometimes I'll look on Wikipedia and then carry that over and look elsewhere to be sure. Wikipedia says the US editor felt that the original title, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, would be misinterpreted as the legend of the Philosopher's Stone and its links to alchemy are not widely known in America. Okay, now we've got 3 different explanations. It's a little strange. So as far as I'm seeing it, there is no solid explanation that we know of. There must have been something, but apparently it hasn't been shared. And if that is the reason that the US editor felt this and that has been proven, then these other 2 places have gotten it wrong. I find it strange that Wikipedia would have 100% accurate information in that way. Just because it's, you know, what Wikipedia is, anybody can put anything on it. But so I just wanted to sort of get across to you that there is no solid explanation for such a famous book. So I found a hard time finding other information about other books. I read in some places that it is just, it's not a thing anymore, that titles are not changed as often, and yet I still find a lot of titles that are very, very different. I'm scrolling through a list here. Now, as you know, or you may know, P.G. Wodehouse is a UK author. I can't remember when he was writing. It was either 19th century or early 20th century, one or the other. I forgot to look at that, but he wrote the Jeeves series. They're great books. They're really, really funny, but the titles do differ greatly over in the UK versus the US version. So in the UK, there's a book by him called The Adventures of Sally. Over here, it's just called mostly Sally. Why? I would think The Adventures of Sally would sound more interesting. I'm not sure. I don't know the explanation. In the UK, it's another one is called Aunts Aren't Gentlemen. AUNTS, aren't gentlemen. And here it's called The Catnappers. Why? I don't know. It's very confusing. We do have one explanation that I came across. And by the way, I was reading that a lot of times between both covers and titles, Canada and America tend to share the same cover and title, but in the UK, UK and Europe usually share the same title and cover. So that's interesting too. Amber says, so weird. Yeah, I think it's weird too. I don't understand at all, and I couldn't find any solid, like, this is why explanation. So there's one that in the UK is called Anne of Windy Willows. This is a Canadian author, by the way. In the UK, it's called Anne of Windy Willows, and in the US, it's called Anne of Windy Poplars. The explanation here is maybe, okay, the UK title is also used in Australia and Japan. The 2 editions are not exactly the same, as when the book was first published, the working title was Anne of Windy Willows, but Montgomery's publisher, that's the author, wanted to change it because of its purported similarity to Kenneth Grahame's novel, The Wind in the Willows. Like, we're going way outside, right? The same publisher also requested some scenes to be cut out for perceived gory or terrifying content, to which Montgomery complied. So Montgomery's UK publisher, however, did not see the need for any of these changes and published the unedited book under the title of Anne of Windy Willows. So in that case, it's a content difference. It's very interesting. Again, not really finding any definitive, okay, I see across all titles why this is happening. Joe was saying maybe there was a book already called that had been released around that time. Publisher got spooked. I'm glad you mentioned that, Joe, because moving on to a different article from The Guardian, I did find that explanation, actually, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to find the quote exactly, but there are, I know I had one that talked specifically about children's books. Here it is. Apparently, children's books are particularly, they have this issue a lot. And so saying exactly what you're going on, Joe, one example is Philip Pullman's Northern Lights became The Golden Compass. So I'm actually not sure if that's US to UK. I'm not sure. Jennifer Donnelly's US bestseller, A Northern Light. And of course, as you see, those are very similar. Northern Lights, Philip Pullman, A Northern Light, Jennifer Donnelly, became A Gathering Light. So yeah, okay, that does happen for sure, where there's some things that are just too close to maybe a title that was only published in the UK or only in the US. So that does make sense, Joe. And apparently it does happen. Another thing that we take into consideration, that people sometimes take into consideration, or publishers, is whether the book title can be offensive. So this is a thing that I also found, and I'm trying to find the exact thing right now, because I have a big list of these. It's a Wikipedia list, so we can look it up and make sure it's accurate, but usually that kind of stuff it's just copied and pasted. So finding some real weird ones along the way, but there's one that was called, and I believe it was by a Canadian author, it was called Little Mexicans. And of course that was changed for the US. And I can understand that 100%, because we have a large Mexican population in the US. So why would you call it that? It could be offensive, certainly. Who knows? I mean, I am not that ethnicity, so I can't say whether I personally would be offended, but I mean, I could see it, a lot of times that kind of thing can be. So they changed it for the US. Can't really blame them there. Excuse me. And anything that, of course, involves a derogatory word would be changed in the US a lot of the time if it's not considered that way elsewhere. But some of these are just so strange. There's one that in the UK was On Her Majesty's Wizardly Service, and in the US it's called To Visit the Queen. I have no explanation. In some cases, I was finding clearly that the UK, for example, with this one book that I found, was always using sort of on their cover, they would have a particular design, because cover apparently does change between US and UK as well, which I think is more commonly known. And the UK version would include this small icon that would always be the same across all of the versions, all of these series, so that you could easily identify the book as being a part of the series. But the US version didn't have that. In another series, the US version had it and the UK didn't. So again, I really can't find like a definitive, yes, it's always this way or that way. So let's move on with that to book covers. There is an article in the Guardian, and the reason I didn't put this, first of all, the reason I didn't put any links down below is because none of them actually agree. So I'm not finding them that useful. So I didn't want to put them down below. But this one I didn't put down below, which was a little bit more useful, although people are contradicting themselves and each other in this article, just quotes from different people. And I didn't put it down below because it does have like the beginning of it, maybe the first quarter, is all political types of stuff. It's about a political book. And so I didn't want to put that down below just because it's not what my channel is about. So I didn't want to confuse anybody. Joe is saying, including giving asterisks and keyboard characters in lieu of curse words, actual titles, they do have to do that sometimes. I've definitely seen that. And I think that Europe is much looser with that kind of stuff than the US, as far as I know. So I have one quote here that says, it's a complicated market. We're talking about US jackets. Yeah, US jackets. It's a complicated market, so the design becomes simpler and focuses on broader appeal. However, things have shifted in the last few years. There are a lot more similarities now, particularly in literary novels, where the luxury of creating much more elegant, beautiful covers has been afforded to the books. So this came, this is by, that quote was from a jacket designer, a hardcover jacket designer, Stuart Bach. B-A-C-H-E. And what he's saying is that the UK and US designs have actually become way more similar nowadays and don't have to be as different. Well, true in some cases, not in others. And the rest of the article does deal with that, the fact that that is not the case always. Excuse me. And so it's pretty interesting because when I think personally, and you guys let me know if you're watching this now or in the comments below if you're watching this afterward, I think that BookTube has had a really big impact, honestly, because a lot of the time, BookTube is older than, some people might think. It's been around longer than some people might think. And with BookTube, the whole point is, a lot of times you show a book or you show like a book, what do you call it? Like a book package when you get a book package in the mail and it's got like a whole bunch of stuff in it. And you're showing the beauty of it. And a lot of times on like Bookstagram, on Instagram, you also are showing off the beauty of a book and you're trying to arrange these pictures to be gorgeous. And so if a book wants to compete in that market, in that social media market, they have to be gorgeous. So I think that that is partially, I didn't see that in this article, but I mean, personally, I've noticed that books have become more and more elegant looking and more beautiful. And one of the things that they point out here in this article is that the hardcovers have to be more beautiful to account for the price, because not a whole lot of people want the hardcovers. They're expensive. They're not as easy to read anywhere, anytime. And so that's another thing, but they didn't mention social media, I don't think, as being a part of it. I think it's a big part of it. Anyway, let's get past that point. I wanted to tell you a couple of other things from here. There are a couple of things that are interesting where they're saying that one cover is more attractive, like a particular, somebody, a cover designer or a publisher is saying, oh, the US or the UK edition is more attractive than the other. And I completely disagree with them in some cases, or I don't get what they're trying to put across. They're talking about the US and UK editions of, what was it? To Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee, and one is saying like that the UK edition was done so much better because it relies on a completely different type of cover art that relies it does like a callback, like a shout out to the original, the first Harper Lee book that was so popular, and then it has a particular sorry, my words, typeset font that really is back in the time period from when Harper Lee first published her first book. And then the US version apparently just doesn't achieve that feel at all. And so, a lot of people felt that the UK version was much prettier. So there's another one called Lincoln in the Bardo. And those two covers are extremely different. I don't know. I know that we're supposed to be able to share screens on here. I can try, but you know how it is sometimes. It doesn't always work very well. I'll give it a shot and see how it goes. But I just want to show you guys this. So you should be able to see this now. Lincoln in the Bardo. And those are two extremely different covers. And the whole thing that they're saying is that the one on the left is better than the one on the right. The one on the right is, I believe, the UK version. And that they're saying in this article, or whoever was saying it, it's very bland. And on the left, it's supposed to speak of the industrial stuff that was going on, the mix of both. Let's see, it says it's very specifically down here. I'll stop the sharing so that I can do this a little easier. It's supposed to, they're saying that there's a feeling of mystery in the one on the left that you just saw. And it isn't just a picture of Lincoln. And this is a quote. I see it as being at dusk, and I thought it picked up the feeling of America in the 19th century, half pastoral and half burgeoning industrial. Now, to me, I'm not seeing any industrial at all. I mean, all I see was a bunch of nature, which is I thought it was attractive because I like that font. It's very popular now. The colors are a little bit bland in my opinion, but they're saying the one on the right is much more dull. One can't help thinking it would be disappointing with its spindle of branches and portrait of Abe Lincoln's son. It reveals little about the book, but plenty about the present obsession of British designers. I don't know. Then they go into how you should really show something about the book on the cover. I can't say that I got anything out of either cover about the book. That could just be me. Okay, now I'm going to go over to the comments over here that I'm getting. And Amber had said, I can see that logic. You might consider a beautiful book at $25 rather than a bland one at the same price. Yeah, absolutely. And Joe is saying, especially from this one author, I think, okay, he's complimenting me. Thank you. You're very kind. And then Joe says, Amber, I certainly think your point is so true. When I am looking at journals or notebooks, if it has a neat, intriguing, or cool cover, I will spend the extra money for that. That is completely true. I agree with that. You guys know that I'm so into journals and notebooks, and they're a big deal for me. I just love them, and I use them for different projects. They inspire me, and if the notebook doesn't look like what I'm writing, it's a little harder for me to get into it. So I am 100% in favor of exactly what Joe said. Yes, thank you. Everyone makes fun of me for the millions of tabs I keep open on my computer. That's nothing, Joe. That's really small. And he's saying, like, you should see my wife's phone. That's so funny. Yeah, my phone usually gets to the point that I have too many tabs and I have to start closing them. But at work, forget it. Everyone jokes about all my tabs. I'm afraid I'll forget something, So anyway, I thought that was an interesting example, that Lincoln book, because I personally probably would have found I think they're both kind of interesting in different ways. And I personally don't think either one describes what's going on in the book that much. That's just that's just my opinion. But another thing is, and this was very interesting. Now, this I didn't know at all. A little bit further down in the article. Sorry, guys. Novelist Jane Harris explains, gender can make a huge difference to how a book is packaged on both sides of the Atlantic. I had no idea about this. She says, this is a quote, "If you are a woman writer, they seem to always want to put a woman on the cover." I didn't notice that. So determined was she that this would not happen to her latest novel, Sugar Money, about two brothers sent to Granada to reclaim 42 slaves for their French master, that when she finished the final chapter, she tweeted, "Put a woman on the cover of this, suckers." I think that's really funny. So she has, in the UK, they have an abstract design. They say, abstract design of sugarcane in eye-popping black, red, and gold. But Harris is not hopeful that the design will be taken up in the US. I wouldn't be either. They seem to be wary, the US, seem to be wary of anything that is in any way abstract or risks being confusing. If you are writing about slavery, they will want to put a cliched image on the cover. See, now for me, and being an American, I would like to see something specific that tells me what the book is about. If I see something very general and the title and the cover don't really say much about the book, it's going to be tougher to get my interest. And like I said, I'm American, so maybe I'm falling into that stereotype, and maybe it's true. Some abstract covers, if they're beautiful, no big deal. Of course, I'm going to be interested. I'm going to see something gorgeous, and maybe I'll say, hey, I'm going to look at that. Yeah, interesting, right, Amber? And hey, Rebecca. Yeah, you need to watch this from the beginning. I think it's pretty interesting, Rebecca. It does deal with both titles and covers, and I did a look into why J.K. Rowling's first Harry Potter book has two different names, and we found some interesting reasons, none of which jive. So it's pretty interesting. Joe was saying, this is hilarious. I mean, really, didn't Fabio make a career of this idea? Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh my God, it's so funny that you say that, Joe. Yeah, Fabio is like the definition of romance covers, and romance covers are typically, and you can watch the Writer's Edge recent romance panel. It was very interesting. We had a number of very experienced writers on there, romance writers, and we did talk about covers. And if you want to check out the part just about covers, find that, you can just find that, just look up the Writer's Edge and you will find us on YouTube very easily. And it's the latest video. And in the description, you'll find that, thanks to Amber, thank you, Amber, we have all of the timestamps. So you can skip to where the cover is. And that is absolutely true. When you look at a romance book, I mean, there was a debate about whether these covers should all be the same. And the majority of these romance writers were saying, yes, they should. And a lot of people who read outside romance say, no, you know, I want to see something different. I want to see something fresh and unique. So it really depends on who you ask. And maybe it does depend on culture. Maybe it does depend. Are you living in the US or the UK? You know, like I was saying before, I think anything eye-popping is going to get the attention, you know, from either Europe or the Americas area, anywhere like Canada, North America, South America. But at the same time, I want something that tells me what it's about, you know. This Sugar Money title, I'll just share it with you real quick since now screen sharing is working, which is lovely. I'll just share it with you real quick so you can see what it looks like. And hopefully you can see this. I'll bring it up. It's very, very, oh no, what have I done now? It's very, I mean, it's attractive, but it is very vague. I mean, I'm just going to guess that, you know, it's going to be a historical fiction type of thing that has something to do with making money off of sugarcane. That's all I can really say. I have no idea that this includes two brothers or what else did they say it was about? Trying to reclaim 42 slaves for their French master. I don't know that. All I think is it must be historical fiction about these, you know, sugarcane or something like that, you know, and harvesting or whatever it's going to be. Attractive, yes. Does it tell me anything? Not really. So, you know, you guys may not agree. You let me know. Oh, good. Thank you, Amber. I'm glad you could see that. So that's pretty much what I came out with. And I found it really funny that there's no definite answer to anything, except that it seems like maybe in America, the cover should be a little bit more specific than the covers in the UK have to be. UK covers seem to be able to be more abstract according to this one person. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. There's more to this this article. It goes on and on and again. Like I'm not really finding any definite conclusion here. It's just sort of, I don't know. There's no definite answer. Yeah, even as I'm like just skimming along to make sure I didn't forget anything I wanted to tell you, I'm still not finding anything, anything that really is super, super helpful. There are certainly authors, if you get published by a major publisher, they're going to, publish what they think is going to interest audiences. It does not always describe what's going on in the book, and it doesn't always match what's going on in the book. We saw an example of this recently, and I'm not going to give this author any airtime because it was a bit of a controversial thing. But recently there was a book that he didn't particularly like his own cover, and he made a big thing out of it. And I have heard other authors say I'm not a huge fan of my own book cover because I don't think it quite captures the essence of what I'm trying to get across. They usually don't put their own cover down. But anyway, there's one case this person did. But I've heard like Jackson Pierce, you can look her up on YouTube. And she had also said that her publisher, who was a major traditional publisher, she was with an imprint, had said, oh, I really don't think the cover is exactly what it should be. It's just going with what's trendy right now, and it doesn't quite fit the book, but what am I going to do? So that's the risk you take if you want a traditional publisher. And if you want to be indie, then of course you have complete control over that. And you can sort of look into this a little bit more and say, hey, my UK cover on Goodreads or whatever, you have control over, I'd like to change that and make it more abstract because I read in this article that abstract is more appealing. And in the US, I want something more specific. You could go that far if you wanted to as an indie author. So I think that's pretty interesting. And Joe's saying, yeah, such a generic cover though about the sugarcane. Exactly. Great marketing strategy. Yeah. And Rebecca says, this raises a lot of interesting questions. We should ask our international friends to take pics of the bestseller shelves at bookstores so we can see the covers. I love that idea, Rebecca. That's brilliant. We should definitely ask that. Amber's agreeing. That would be interesting. I never thought of that. That would be fascinating. And then we could compare what's on the bestseller shelves here, what's on the bestseller shelves there, and what do the covers generally look like that are making these sales. That's a fantastic idea. Maybe we'll start like a little movement there, a little project or something. That'd be really cool. All right, that is about all I have for you today. I am surprised that I'm coming out with no definite answer except for that one author and publisher that seemed to have a pretty good idea. So I would probably go with that if I was deciding between two places, like what I wanted to do for Europe and anything in the Americas region. But otherwise, no solid answer, especially having to do with titles. So I think it's interesting to explore anyway, and maybe someday we'll find something a little bit more definitive. And if you have an answer and you're watching this now or afterwards, leave a comment down below. I am totally into this idea that that Rebecca came up with. And I'm not going to say that out loud, Joe, so it won't be on record. And thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you learned a little something from this, even though we don't have a definitive answer. And I will come back next week with another interesting topic. So I will see you next week, Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you are aware of when I go live. So I will see you soon. Thank you for spending time with me. Bye.